Hello everyone and welcome to the program Business Points on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. On today's edition, we'll be looking at Pan-African integration, sustainable development. Joining me live in the studio is Ambassador Shirley, the CEO of Curtis Prestige Group and also the Global Chairperson and Head of Mission of Albert 2024, Kigali, Rwanda. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining on to this edition of the program.
Thank you very much, Samuel.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, the pleasure is all mine, I would say, because, despite your busy schedule, you'll still find a way to honor our invitation. Thank you so much. So looking at Pan-African integration, right, so we would definitely, there are basic aims to this integration, which talks about, increasing economic efficiency to enhance competitiveness and as well as reduce poverty and improve standard of living. But for us to be able to achieve this, definitely we'll need to know what are the key drivers to achieving Pan-African integration.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good question. I want to start by highlighting the importance of Pan-African integration in the first place. I believe that integration in itself highlights the transformative potential of uniting Africa's economies through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area. So I believe that by breaking trade barriers and fostering collaboration, also by leveraging regional economic communities across Africa, that this kind of integration can drive economic growth, industrialization and self-sufficiency for the continent. This Pan-African integration calls for, collective efforts from all the stakeholders, the private sector, the governments, the innovators, the investors, to position Africa as a global leader in sustainable development and business transformation. And I believe that by the time we begin to, address such matters, it begins to build a collective vision for shared prosperity. Okay. Now, coming to the key drivers, and the obstacles that you have mentioned, just like I mentioned earlier about the African Continental Free Trade area, that is also one of the key drivers because we need collective vision for and collective cooperation for, regional cooperation and a collective vision for shared prosperity. So that can be seen as one key driver. And we need to also leverage platforms that drive that have initiatives that drive collaboration, sustainability, economic growth, and whatnot. One of which is the Africa Business Leadership and Investment Summit. Now, the obstacles, I think they are quite a handful. One, fragmented policies, right? We have fragmented policies, we have protectionist attitudes, we have, other obstacles like infrastructure gaps. These are the things that affect the integration that we are driving for in Africa. Yes.
Okay, looking at this, you made mention of stakeholders. Now, definitely we'll be looking at ECOWAS and other regional economic communities. So what massive role can they play in achieving this Pan-African integration?
Collaboration. I think the initiatives that drive collaboration and regional cooperation, that is what they can do. So ECOWAS, of course, their focus is West Africa, but we're looking at a holistic Pan-African integration for Africa. So with bodies like ECOWAS, with institutions like the ECOWAS, I believe that they can begin to drive conversations and set up policies that will, inspire Africans to collaborate with each other. Yes, so driving a collaboration-driven economy would really do us a whole lot of good.
Okay, let's look at it from this angle of United Nations. Now, definitely they also have, a massive role they need to play because, they have their own agenda for Africa, and we're hoping those agendas are actually for the betterment of the motherland. So how can Pan-African integration be aligned with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union agenda?
Okay. Pan-African integration supports the SDGs. As we know, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have set up to ensure that nations thrive and nations do better. And so if we look at the Pan-African integration through the support of the SDGs that has been set up by the United Nations, we can merge it with the Agenda 2063. I believe that by promoting inclusive economic growth, decent work, which are all part of the SDGs, that we can reduce inequalities, we can reduce poverty, and we can begin to drive for a continent that thrives on collaboration and sustainability. So that's my view.
Okay, let's also look at it from the political angle, because every of these angles now plays a massive role for us to be able to achieve the development and sustainable, not just the usual development that we see today, and then due to lack of policies, proper policies being in ground. So how key is it going to be for the political and economic social implication of Pan-African integration to be able to help African communities not just develop but keep developing?
That's an interesting one, because in Africa, the political atmosphere really needs a lot of overhauling. So politically, I believe that integration can strengthen governance and peace building, right? It opens up larger markets, because when we have policies that drive the economy, you can't do away with the public sector. We need them to help us make policies that thrives the private sector, that drives the private sector to thrive. And so it's important that they manage, or we manage. So yes, politically, I believe that this will open up larger markets, while, it creates a social framework to bring people together, to have that confidence in the environment, confidence to invest. Because if the atmosphere is not conducive and economically friendly, we wouldn't see investors. You and I wouldn't be able to do business, confidently. We wouldn't be able to put in our resources as much as we would. So, of course, politically, they have the political framework needs to be, put in such a way that it drives collaboration, it drives economic progress for the continent.
Okay, how massively important is it going to be for African leaders to come to the realization that it's time for Africa to be one of the contenders of the world in terms of economy?
Strong leadership. Strong leadership, multilateral cooperation. It's important because it is not Nigeria, Ghana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, it is Africa. And when we begin to have multilateral cooperation and collaboration, it will foster regional cooperation. And that can actually drive the economic buoyancy and sustainability that we are looking for.
All right, we'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back, Business Point continues. Please do stay with us. Business Point on Global Television.
The business world can be dynamic and unpredictable, with headwinds and volatility sometimes becoming an obstacle for players in the business and economy landscape. Watch Business Point on Global Television as Samuel Oji walks you through the twists, turns and curves in bonds, stocks and crucial market indices from a global standpoint. Watch Business Point weekdays on Global Television at 11 a.m. West African time. Business Point, this is business.
Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, you've not missed so much, but you've missed a little part. So we're getting into the next phase where we'll be looking at SMEs and private investors. We'll be talking about their contribution thus far. And I still have live in the studio with me, Ambassador Shirley Hills. So Ambassador, looking at SMEs now and private sector, how key is it going to be for the private sector to be able to help this Pan-African integration in line with the SMEs?
Very, very key. I believe that private sector is the driver of economic growth in every polity, in every economy. You see, Africa's private sector, especially the SMEs and multinationals, can lead integration by investing in cross-border ventures, right? they can also create regional value chains and drive innovation. So it is important that we connect businesses, we connect businesses that have ventures that bring value to the table.
Okay.
And it's important for private sector to, so whether you're multinational or SME, we need to harness these ideas and we need to invest in these startups so that they can drive the innovation that takes Africa's global business transformation to the next level.
Good, great. Looking at that now, obviously there's no how we could talk about private sector SMEs and leave technological innovation out of the question. So now, technological innovation now is actually key, and then the world, the global market is revolving and everybody's venturing into technology. So looking at Pan-African integration, obviously we also have to look into technology as well. So how key is it going to be for us to have a market here in Africa, and then for the leaders, both in private sectors, ECOWAS, SEC, every other body, to get involved in, creating workshops and avenues for Nigeria, not just Nigeria, but Africa at large, to be able to, move with the trend of technology and innovation?
Okay, thank you. You see, technology is a key enabler of integration. It's a key enabler of innovation as well. So it also drives digital trade. And like you said, the world has gone digital, and we must hatch in on that. We must leverage that to, sustain the innovations that are coming forth and drive transformation for Africa. So, and for initiatives, especially like the Africa Business Leadership and Investment Summit, we are promoting the role of tech-driven solutions in supporting Africa's business renaissance, especially through cross-border digital platforms and e-commerce. So technology does enable, innovation and business transformation and must be embraced. Yes.
Okay. How swift do you think all of this can happen? That's talking about technological innovation, and how swift do you think the bodies in charge are going to make this happen?
Timelines may not be so, cast in stone, but I believe that if we have the right environment and if we can also mitigate the risks, because when you talk about technology, there are risks involved as well.
Yes.
So we must also look at how to balance the risks and manage them while also driving the force that would optimize technological advancements for businesses. So I believe it has to do with balance.
So now, we're going to look at success stories of the best practice in African integration and how it can be replicated. If we should backtrack, we've had lots of business workshops and all that have benefited Africa at large. So how key is it going to be that the success stories that we've witnessed before would be implemented, and then for us to achieve and then see more in terms of integration, technology, and our African leaders getting involved with what is actually happening in the global market?
I find this question very interesting because to a very large extent, as Africans, especially in this part of Africa, we don't embrace continuity. Once a new leadership comes on board, they kind of discard what their predecessors have put in place. And that's not good. It doesn't help us because we need continuity for longevity. And so it's talking about success stories, it's important that we look back at what has worked and what can we take out to make the next thing happen. I said sometime that until we consolidate the now, we cannot create the next. So looking at the success stories that have already, happened so far, it's important that successful integration efforts. Let's throw back to the East African Community Customs Union.
Yes.
They demonstrated how regional cooperation can yield economic benefits. So it's important that we look at such success stories, look at the framework, look at what has worked, and what we need for the next level. So it's looking at our success stories, it's just is inevitable. We must do that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Hills, for taking our time to join us on today's edition of the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, but before we close the curtain onto this edition, what it's going to be your advice or suggestion on how to see to the actualization of this Pan-African integration?
Okay. Like I said, in a nutshell,
Yes.
Sustainable development practices. Practices that will help us, innovate. Practices that will help us consolidate.
Yes.
Practices that will help us to create. So while we are, exploring new ideas, we also need to have, the enabling environment, because an idea at its initial stage can either thrive or die depending on the environment. It's environment centric, yes. And so it's important that we create the enabling environment, we have the right conversations, we also ensure that we are making the right investments, because for investments, for instance, investors want to ensure that the environment they are putting their resources in is conducive enough to ensure that they can make returns on their investment. So I think the development practices, policies, policies that help us thrive, and also an enabling environment generally.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Shirley Hales, CEO Curtis Prestige Group, and also Global Chairperson and Head of Mission of Kigali Rwanda Project 2024. That's how much time will permit us to take on to this edition of the program. I am Samuel Odi. Thank you for staying with us. Bye for now.